What's going on, my friend? It's Jeff Newport from ChasingStrength.com. And in today's video, we are discussing the pumping iron gym owner's new core training workout. All right, so let's dive in. But first, let me ask you a question. Have you ever met somebody who knows literally everyone? You know, like you bring up somebody and they say, oh, yeah, I know that person and blah, 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 blah. Well, my friend John is exactly like that. In fact, he used to own the gym where the movie Pumping Iron, you know, the one with Arnold Schwarzenegger was filmed. Yeah, that one. And let me tell you, John knows everyone in the bodybuilding world. In fact, just the other day, he was telling me a story about how he had a conversation with the 1983 Mr. Olympia Samir Bannout. I think I pronounced his name correctly. Anyway, the two of them were talking about how Joe Weider talked funny. And this is, I can't remember when this was. Maybe it was like the 90s or the 2000s. And how he had a nasal, funny, high-pitched voice. And then Joe walked right up behind them and asked him what they were talking about and said his high-pitched, nasally whine of a voice, I don't talk like that. So, you know, I was cracking up when John told me that. So John, yeah, he knows Arnold. He's great friends with the Kaz, Bill Kazmaier, 3 times world's strongest man. And he actually even trained with 5 times Mr. Olympia Dorian Yates at one point. And if that's not enough, like if that's not enough to make you sick about how many guys this guy knows, right? Like John was even the wellness director for ISSA, the International Sports Science Association that was founded by Dr. Fred Hatfield. You know, Dr. Fred, a.k.a. Dr. Squat, the first man to ever squat over 1,000 pounds in a powerlifting competition. Well, anyway, John and I have been friends for a long time, and he was telling me a couple of years ago about how he was seeing the head athletic trainer over at Duke University for his lower back. But even though this gentleman, who I'm sure is quite great at what he does, had worked with lots of college athletes and even some pro athletes, he was unable to help John. And as a matter of fact, everything got worse after John almost died in an emergency open heart surgery. Right. As a result, he had some complications. And one of those was where the muscles in his rib cage, the intercostal muscles, were actually partially paralyzed. And so, as you can imagine, or maybe you don't know this, but those muscles are part of what are called your accessory respiratory muscles. They actually aid in being able to help you inspire, take a breath, and breathe. Okay. Now, since then, he's been on and off using different bodybuilding-inspired fitness regimens, trying to rehab himself. But unfortunately, he's had practically zero success, and resulting in, as you can guess, a lot of frustration. So, in fact, John's son, his oldest son, even got him one of those O2 breath trainers to help him get him breathing correctly. So fast forward to the other day when I got this text from John. I'll pop it up here on the screen. I feel like I'm moving a little bit better today. Those goblet squats are very good for my legs and my core, I think, and he's right. Right. And then he said, I just did your core program. I didn't realize breathing could be so hard. And this is from a guy who was having trouble breathing. All right. That cracks me up. John is always like the master of understatement. And this is the most important part that I want you to see here is he says, my entire spine feels so much better just after one session. I remember this is a guy who had some back pain and, unfortunately, he wasn't able to reconcile it working with an athletic trainer. All right. And you might be wondering like what my core program is. Well, that is my core program called Systematic Core Training for Kettlebells. But the key point that I wanted to make, and John's key point, was the breathing. So in case you're not aware of that, let me make this super clear because this was something that shocked me when I learned it, I don't know, probably 15, maybe 20 years ago. And that is that breathing, yes, breathing, I'll say that again, breathing is the foundation of your core training, okay? And now what kind of breathing? Well, specifically, we are talking about diaphragmatic breathing. So if your breathing is off, if you cannot breathe diaphragmatically, and again, if your breathing is off like John's was, then your core or your core musculature is going to be dysfunctional and it's not going to work correctly either, okay? And that can lead to, in many cases, pain and injury, like John experienced in his lower back. Now, research by a world-famous physician named Dr. Carol Lewitt suggests that proper breathing patterns, diaphragmatic breathing specifically, are the foundation of all other movement patterns, like I mentioned before. So again, if your breathing is off, then everything else about your movement is going to be off. And other research shows that diaphragmatic breathing actually improves spinal stabilization. It decreases the amount of pain you feel, and actually increases the thickness or the muscularity of other lumbar stabilizers like the transverse abdominis and the multifidus. So you might be wondering, well, that's great. How do I perform diaphragmatic breathing? Okay, well, there are 5 steps that we're going to cover right now. Okay, so number 1, pick a comfortable position. Now, for most of us, it's either lying on your back or lying on your stomach. Number 2, you're going to swallow, and you're going to hold your tongue on the top of your mouth behind your front teeth. Number 3, you're going to slowly inhale through your nose. Okay, again, keeping your tongue behind your front teeth with your jaw closed, back teeth together but not clenched. And you're going to inhale through your nose for 2 to 4 seconds, okay, or 2 to 4 count. And you're going to focus, and this is kind of weird, but just stick with me here. You're going to focus on inhaling into your toes. So in your mind's eye, you're going to view or imagine your breath being pulled down into your toes. And as you do so, you'll feel your stomach rise and expand. Okay, so number 4, you're going to slowly exhale through your nose, not your mouth, through your nose for a 2 to 4 count. And then number 5, you're going to repeat that for about 10 breaths or so, and of course, more if you'd like. Okay, so that's how you do diaphragmatic breathing. Now, what if you're already doing diaphragmatic breathing? Well, simple answer, do more of it, okay? Now, there's some more research out there that shows the more diaphragmatic breathing you can do, the better. In fact, up to 30 breaths, 30 diaphragmatic breaths multiple times per day is actually better. Now, plus, here's a lot of people don't know is that diaphragmatic breathing actually stimulates your vagus nerve. And vagus nerve stimulation has been shown potentially to decrease pain and increase arousal of your parasympathetic or your rest and digest part of your nervous system. Okay, both of those are 2 great pluses. All right, I think you'd probably agree with that. So, how do you know for sure if diaphragmatic breathing is going to decrease your stiffness or tightness or improve your ranges of motion, right? And unstickify your lower back or any other way or any other place, excuse me? Well, it's quite simple. You are going to test it. How are you going to do that? Well, you're going to test a range of motion in any movement, doesn't matter. But I prefer particularly you test the affected area. Okay, so let's say you're having shoulder pain and you can't, or shoulder discomfort, or your shoulder feels stuck. Don't really want to say pain too much, right? So you're just going to move your arm into that range of motion. Okay, so maybe it gets stuck right here and feels tight right here. Well, you're going to test it. That's now your baseline. Okay. And again, you're going to make note of that. And then you're going to perform up to 30 diaphragmatic breaths in any position. Again, the 2 most popular positions, lying on your back, lying on your stomach. Okay. Then you're going to retest your range of motion. So you're going to do that exact same test. And you're going to see if you can get your shoulder further over your head. Okay. So what does that mean? Well, if your range of motion improved, then the diaphragmatic breathing helped increase your reflexive core stability. Okay, we'll talk about what that actually means in some other video. And I think we actually have talked about it in some other videos on this channel. But let's keep going here, okay? So if your range of motion didn't improve, then chances are better than good. You need something stronger than just good old-fashioned diaphragmatic breathing. And you'll actually need to use what I gave John inside Systematic Core Training for Kettlebells, and that is a video called Your Core Foundation. And in fact, I recommend that everybody with lower back pain or injuries or hip injuries like I had start with the video, Your Core Foundation, okay? In fact, the funny thing is, as I was writing about John in this text message that I got from him, for my email newsletter, and at that same time, John actually called me. He was super excited about how good his lower back was still feeling, right? Nice and loose is what he said, even though he had trained it like hours beforehand. So I think he called me around 12 or so, and he had trained it like 6 o'clock in the morning. Okay. And he still couldn't believe it because he hadn't ever experienced that before. So I said, hey, John, I'm writing an email about our conversation, the text message. I hope you don't mind. He goes, yeah, please do. Please tell everybody about it. So, and then I just punched out of the call because I had to go pick up my son. But the important thing that I want to tell you about how the call ended was that John once again reaffirmed. He said, hey, man, I can't believe it. I am breathing deeper than I have in years. So look, even though you may know everyone like John, no one person, including me, knows everything about everything. So if someone like John, who runs circles around most of us, could only dream of and can learn something new about training, well, how much more the rest of us, okay? So look, if your workouts aren't working and you've got lower back issues or other problems and you're seeing little, if any, progress, it's probably time to pull the old proverbial car over and check underneath the proverbial hood, okay? I recommend you do what John is currently doing and use systematic core training for kettlebells and see if you see the same kind of near immediate improvements that John is seeing. Okay. If that sounds interesting to you, I will leave a link for systematic core training for kettlebells below this video in the description below. All right. Hopefully you found this video helpful. If you did, click the like button, smash the subscribe button, leave me a comment in the comments section below, and of course, share it with a friend. All right. Until next time, my friend, stay strong.